Before this year, I had been to Anime Central twice, first in 2012 and again in 2014. Both times left a bad taste in my mouth and really made me hesitant about returning to ASIN. Did this year also leave me feeling something was missing? Or have I been converted to a full-fledged ASIN fan? Anime Central is a 3-day con that takes place in the Hyatt Regency and Donald Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. A lot of anime cons call this location their home, but ASIN is by far the largest. Right off the bat, it should be said that ASIN is a very big con. As of 2015, it's considered to be the second biggest anime convention in America now that it's past Otakon, and you can tell, there are people everywhere. If you're the type of person who doesn't enjoy bigger cons, ASIN might not be for you. ASIN is also a party con. Sure, there's a ton to do at ASIN that has nothing to do with partying, but I don't think anyone would argue if I said that ASIN has one of the craziest nightlifes of any con out there. If you like huge party cons, ASIN is very much for you. Back to the location. The Hyatt and Convention Center actually hold ASIN much better than I remembered. I don't know if maybe I'm just more used to big crowds now or not, but even though there were tons of people everywhere I looked, I never felt it was too crowded. Only a few times did it really get shoulder to shoulder, and that was mostly at night when everyone from the convention center spilled over into the Hyatt. I should point out that the streets of Rosemont should also count as part of ASIN's location, as the con spills out into the city in a major way. If you go outside at all over the weekend, you'll see nothing but cosplayers everywhere. One thing that really impressed me was the elevators in the Hyatt. With so many people, the elevators could have been a huge problem, but ASIN had people line up, and they moved people on and off the elevators as quickly as they could. This made what could have been a huge pain into a pleasant wait. I give them a lot of credit for making this work so well. I also need to mention the food trucks. Normally, ASIN is one of the worst cons for me when it comes to finding food at the convention itself, but this year, ASIN brought in food trucks. This was an incredibly good idea. I've never had such a full stomach during ASIN in the past. I hope they keep doing this and maybe start to bring even more in the future. Registration seemed to move surprisingly fast for such a big con. I'm not gonna say it's the best I've ever seen, but considering how many people were there to get badges, they handled it very well. This may have been helped by all the staff they had. I never once felt like there wasn't enough staff running around. I saw them everywhere. I never needed help with anything, but I feel like if I did, it wouldn't have been that hard to find somebody to ask. ASIN had a nice printed out guide of everything happening over the weekend. They also used the guidebook app as a way to have the schedule in your pocket at all times. This worked really well, as they had a ton of events going on and the app was a great way to keep track of them all. Something I felt was a little lacking this year was ASIN's guest list. Normally, ASIN has a lot of guests from all over. I'm not saying they had no guests, it just felt like a lot less than normal. It really felt like they traded more guests for guests that you don't see as often. I just wish we could have had both. ASIN is a con that has no end to the amount of things to do, from smaller things like a pachinko room, an AMV room, viewing rooms, game tournaments, and a ton of other smaller things to keep you busy, to bigger things like their dealer's room. The dealer's room at Anime Central is by far the biggest and best dealer's room I have ever seen in my life. There's no competition, at least as far as the cons I have been to. You could fit a large amount of the rest of the con inside the dealer's room. It's massive. I have no doubt you'll find way more stuff than you can afford that you'll want to spend your money on. I'm not kidding. You can just go to ASIN for the dealer's room alone and still have a great time. Another big part of ASIN is its game room. Located on the bottom floor of the Hyatt, the game room is pretty on point, but it really doesn't feel big enough for ASIN. While everything else at this con has grown to a ridiculous size, the game room, while still a decent size, is smaller than game rooms I've seen at medium-sized cons. Now, I wouldn't care that much, but because of how many people go to ASIN, at times it would become all but impossible to play much of anything. I don't know where they'd move it to, but I hope they find a way to expand it and get more in there. ASIN has 2 raves, Synergy on Friday and the Soap Bubble on Saturday. I only went to the Soap Bubble because I was too busy with nightlife on Friday. The Soap Bubble is by far the largest anime con rave I've ever been to. The music also hit very hard and the lighting was on point. The only problem I have with the Soap Bubble is how long you have to wait in line to get in. But honestly, there really isn't a whole lot that can be done about this. If you want to rave it up in the Soap Bubble, you have to do your time in line. The size of this convention is large. Location gets a 10 out of 10. In the past, I felt this location was too small for ASIN, but after this year, I no longer feel that way. Unless ASIN blows way up in the next few years, I think it's perfect. Organization gets a 9 out of 10. I was very blown away by how organized things were at ASIN. Everything seemed to run really smooth, a clear sign of how long they've been running this thing. I'm not gonna say it was perfect, but it was pretty close. The dealer's room gets a 10 out of 10. I can't think of a better dealer's room. I really can't even get across to you how good this dealer's room is. You kind of have to see it for yourself. The game room gets an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of great games in the game room, and they have a nice system for trading games out, so there's even more games than what it looks like when you first walk in. But this doesn't change how cramped it gets. I know it's a very large con, but I really wish the game room was bigger. Guests get a 7 out of 10. This is a great guest list. For most cons, this would possibly get a 9 or a 10, but ASIN isn't most cons. ASIN is known for pulling a lot of big guests. This guest list just felt a bit lacking compared to normal. Like I said, it wasn't bad, it just didn't feel like an ASIN guest lineup. Panels get an 8 out of 10. Like everything else, ASIN had a huge schedule. Just looking at the panels listed out looked extremely intimidating. There was without a doubt no way to do it all. I will admit, I didn't actually go to any panels this year because I was busy doing other things, but I have been told by trusted sources that a lot of the panels started late or got moved around without a lot of notice. So that's what this score is based on. Staff gets a 10 out of 10. For me at least, staff was very nice and very helpful. They did their jobs extremely well, and because of them, ASIN 2016 went off without a hitch. So, a huge thank you to everyone who was part of the staff this year. The rave gets a 10 out of 10. Like I said, I could only do the soap bubble on Saturday, but that was all I needed to see. ASIN's raves have a reputation for being the best in the con world, and for me, this year proved that. Anime Central is the biggest anime con in the Midwest. There's no end to the things you can find to do there. It goes all night, almost never ending until the end of Sunday. I do still really wish ASIN would join the other big cons and become a 4-day con already. But either way, it's one of the best cons out there. At the end of the day, I give Anime Central 2016 a 9 out of 10. As well as giving it the Convention Review seal of approval, given to any con I feel you must visit at least once before you die. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I put some annotations to other videos I think you might like, as well as one to my online merch store where you can buy all kinds of Convention Reviews merch. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next video.